Wait, why is the compliance note still blank on Exhibit D4? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Veronica Chase, the COO with the expensive blowout and teeth like she flossed with wire transfers, rolled her eyes like I'd just interrupted her Botox appointment. It's irrelevant. Legal signed off, she said, waving her wine glass at the screen like it was a fly. Let's keep moving, people. I muted myself. Not because I was scared, because it was the only way I wouldn't say something I couldn't unsay. The windowless room I worked out of, tucked behind finance, felt colder than usual. Fluorescent lights buzzed above like a taunt. Stay invisible. That was the game. Been playing it for 11 years. My name's Harper Lynn. I'm the escrow specialist, which is a fancy way of saying I keep the vault locked until everyone stops lying. If you're still listening, by the way, do me a favor. Tap that subscribe button and give this a like. It helps the team keep telling stories like mine, especially the ones where the quiet ones hit back. 97% of folks forget. Don't be one of them. Back to the call. Veronica was speed-running the checklist like she was trying to set a land speed record for corporate negligence. Harper, we good to close escrow pending post-signature from counsel? She asked, all sing-song and condescension, like I was Alexa with a pulse. No, I said flatly. Silence. Oh, she laughed. I meant after legal wraps, obviously. Her camera froze just long enough that I could see her nostrils flaring. Let's not hold the room up over admin delays, all right? Admin, like I was stapling newsletters in the break room. I watched my inbox flood with draft files, half of them misnumbered, one with a metadata trail from someone named Mason R., who hadn't been on the deal in weeks. They were cutting corners. Again. And they were about to do it with $18 million boxed in escrow that I was the final key holder for. The irony? If they'd just let me do my job, this thing would have signed off clean. But no. Veronica had a clock to beat. Her whole damn leadership style ran on Red Bull and self-worship. Internal deadline at 5. She'd get it done at 4:58 even if it meant punting protocol into the sun. Move Exhibit E to final folder, someone said. I toggled screens, scanning D4 again. It was still blank. No compliance note, no custodial override, and worse, no one cared. Until they would. Veronica's voice cut through again. We've confirmed all materials. Harper, your go-ahead, please. I unmuted. Still pending buyer's side compliance note, I said. Another pause, then a chuckle. We've got legal. That's enough. Another chuckle. This time from someone on the buyer's side. Maybe they didn't know who I was. Maybe they didn't care. But that compliance note triggered clause 9.3b in the escrow protocol, a clause that made my signature the final release requirement. No signature, no wire. And guess what wasn't signed? Harper, Veronica said again, slower this time, voice heavy with PR training. Let's move forward. We'll clean it up post-closing. You're just the conduit. The conduit. That's when it clicked. They didn't just overlook me. They thought I was furniture, a warm body behind a keyboard. So I smiled and started quietly assembling something that would remind them just how locked that vault really was. They thought the call was about to end. It hadn't even started. The cursor blinked at me like it was daring me to blink back. Clause 9.3b sat right there in the document I'd written, reviewed, and enforced for years. It wasn't new. It wasn't obscure. It wasn't buried in legalese. It was plain as daylight. Escrow funds shall not be released until final tier custodial sign-off is completed, including compliance confirmation from both parties. That confirmation was still missing. I slid a note into the comments field of the shared doc, discreet and factual. Pending buyer compliance note for release validation, required per 9.3b. 10 seconds later, Veronica's voice cut through like a steak knife through drywall. Harper, we don't need admin commentary today, thanks. Legal's already approved. Let's stay focused. Her voice was all sugar-glazed steel, just enough fake sweetness to make the insult sting more. The kind of tone that says she's already labeled you in her head. Background noise with a Wi-Fi signal. Laughter followed. The kind that starts nervous, then picks up steam once people realize no one's defending the target. I didn't respond. I just muted. And I kept typing. In my private terminal window, I opened the escrow chain history, pulled the change log, scanned timestamps. A new edit had been made to the final escrow summary just 2 hours before the call, by someone with access they shouldn't have had. A ghost login from the buyer's side. That edit removed a reference to the compliance note altogether. Not an accident, not a mistake. Someone was cleaning the tracks. And Veronica, either through ignorance or arrogance, was about to bulldoze the whole thing through on a technicality. Across the screen, boxes flickered as people juggled roles. CFOs confirming wire schedules, tax counsel double-checking withholding schedules, buyer side leads nodding as if everything was lining up. I watched it like someone watching a building slowly tilt toward collapse, wondering when someone else might notice. No one did. My phone buzzed quietly. A Teams message from someone I barely knew, one of the junior associates from the buyer's legal team. "Hey, just to confirm, you're saying D4 is incomplete?" I didn't type much, just replied, "Check clause 6. A moment passed. Then another. Then the typing bubble popped up, disappeared, popped up again. I could practically see his panic through the screen. "Oh shit," he typed. Then, "Hang tight." Across the video call, Veronica was still running the show, speeding through section 11 with the charm of a dentist upselling gum grafts. "Let's get Exhibit G slotted. Taxes are squared, right?" No one mentioned Exhibit D again, but the junior associate's camera was off now, and I could tell he was reading. Hard. I kept my eyes on the screen, expression neutral. Years of training and being invisible had its perks. No one watched you when they didn't think you mattered, but I watched everyone, and right now all the power in the room was being built on a missing signature I wasn't going to give. Not yet. Not like this. My signature wasn't a rubber stamp. It was the final brick in a legal dam that kept that $18 million from flooding through unchecked. And I was watching people build leaks into the wall and pray no one noticed. Veronica leaned back in her chair, sipping from her wine glass like she'd just won something. She had no idea the clock she was racing wasn't the one that mattered. Mine was, and it had already started ticking. "Are you sure something's off?" The message pinged again, this time with more urgency, from Alex Brighton, junior counsel on the buyer's side. He was green, overworked, and probably hadn't slept in 2 days. But at least he was asking the right question. Finally, I typed one line. "Check Exhibit D4, Clause 6. Then I sat back and watched. His profile icon went idle, then green again, then idle. A minute later, his camera flicked off, and for the next 5 minutes, nothing came from him. But I knew exactly what he was doing. He was reading the clause, slowly, carefully, just like I'd done 2 hours ago when I found the edit log. He was also realizing that no one in leadership had flagged it. No one had even noticed. Clause 6. Release of escrowed funds is contingent upon custodial sign-off and receipt of conditional compliance note from buyer side legal per subclause 3A. That note was missing. And my sign-off? Still pending, still intentional, still untouched. Alex reappeared with his camera off and typed, "Jesus, this wasn't flagged by anyone." Then, "They said everything was clean." Of course they did. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. He was unraveling fast enough. Veronica was pushing ahead, glossing over signatures, referring to standard override procedure like it was an accepted ritual. I watched her gloss right over D4 again, this time speaking faster, louder, as if rushing could drown out the details. "Let's roll through to Exhibits J through L," she said, her voice honey-laced with command. "We'll get the final sign-offs routed back through counsel and push docs for escrow release before 5. Someone from the finance side muttered, "All good from us." Someone else from tax confirmed wire prep. My inbox blinked again, this time from escrow ops. Subject, final custodial signature check. Pending Harper Lynn. I didn't open it. I already knew what it said. Alex messaged one last time. "Should I escalate this?" I typed slowly. "If you don't, protocol will." He didn't respond after that. 2 minutes later, I saw the ripple begin. The buyer's lead counsel leaned in toward their screen. Their eyes darted, reading something on a second monitor. Then they asked, casually, but too late to hide the tension, "Can someone confirm the status of D4? Veronica didn't miss a beat. That's standard, covered by prior exhibits. Counsel didn't look convinced. Then the second ripple. The escrow agent shifted in their seat. That's when I knew the PDF had landed in their queue too, the one with the embedded protocol references, the one I'd built over the years and refined after every close call error, the one with clause 9.3b embedded in 3 separate systems, all of which had one gatekeeper, me. I hadn't pulled the trigger yet, but I had my finger on it. Veronica glanced at the clock on the wall behind her like it owed her something. Can we get final confirmation from escrow so we're not sitting here all night? Silence. Then Alex's voice broke through, tight, unsure. I believe we might have a procedural hold. You'd have thought he farted in church. Everyone froze. Veronica tilted her head like she couldn't believe what she'd just heard. What? Clause 6 of Exhibit D4 appears to be, incomplete. There's a conditional note that hasn't been submitted, and custodial sign-off is still pending. Now, every eye on that call, not that they'd looked at me for the last 40 minutes, suddenly turned, not out of respect, out of dread. Veronica laughed, but it was hollow. We've always retro-signed minor items. Escrow can't be held up over this. I could have unmuted then, could have dropped the hammer right there, but I didn't. Not yet. Because the game wasn't about shouting over them. It was about letting their own momentum run them straight into the wall, and I was already watching the cracks form. Veronica's voice sliced through the tension like she was trying to take control back by pure force of will. We're overthinking this, she said, tapping her pen against her mug. Let's move with verbal confirmations. We can retro-sign later. We've done that before. Before. Not with me, not with clause 9.3b, not with $18 million locked behind my signature like a steel gate. Her confidence was the counterfeit kind, shiny, brittle, one good crack from turning to dust. Someone on the buyer's team, poor man sounded like he wanted to evaporate, murmured, "Maybe Harper can give escrow clearance just to keep the timeline intact?" Veronica didn't even let him finish. "She's just the admin conduit," she said, slow and dismissive, the way you explain something to a confused toddler. "She routes documents. She doesn't determine protocol." A few people nodded automatically, conditioned to follow the loudest voice in the room, not the most informed, just the loudest. The culture of every rushed closing I'd ever witnessed distilled into one ignorant sentence, just the admin conduit, not the custodial officer, not the signature authority, not the one holding the lock. My hand hovered over the unmute button for a second. Just a second. But I wasn't going to waste breath on someone who'd already decided what box I belonged in. You don't argue with arrogance. You let it top itself off until gravity does the rest. So I didn't speak. Didn't sigh, didn't flinch, didn't even blink. I simply opened my private integrity folder. It was a quiet place, my own structure, my own map of every signature, every routing, every time-stamped change ever made to these documents. My little underground bunker of truth. And tonight, it was going to save everyone from themselves. I ran the chain of custody validator first. Line by line, it lit up with green markers until it stopped. A yellow flag. Unauthorized metadata alteration on D4. Same ghost login I'd noticed earlier. I clicked deeper. Another yellow flag popped up, this time showing the missing conditional note wasn't just overlooked. It was suppressed. Someone had deleted the placeholder field 3 days ago, then reinserted an empty one yesterday. Smooth on the surface, rotten underneath. Veronica kept barreling ahead on the call, pretending none of this mattered. We're aligned on valuation. We're aligned on tax. We're aligned on schedule. There's nothing preventing us from finalizing. Her voice was confidence lacquered over desperation. She needed this closure, needed the internal deadline met, needed the optics of efficiency. Meanwhile, the escrow agent sat silent, reading something off-screen. I knew exactly what file he was looking at, exactly what line he'd hit, exactly how long it took him to get to the red banner I'd embedded. Protocol latched, custodial clearance required, no override. He would reach it any second. I kept scrolling through the logs, my face calm, breath steady, posture straight. If anyone had looked directly at me, they would have seen a woman who had already solved the puzzle hours ago, waiting for everyone else to catch up. And still, no one asked me anything. They thought my silence meant defeat. They mistook it for submission. It wasn't. It was preparation. the kind that comes before a controlled detonation. I dragged the final verification window onto the center of my screen. The system awaited my input, glowing faintly with the kind of authority none of them realized I held. Custodial sign-off. Pending override capability. None protocol state. Frozen unless signed by H. Lin, escrow specialist, level 3 clearance. They pushed forward. I stayed quiet, and every second of that mismatch was tightening the noose Veronica didn't even know she'd stepped into. All I had to do now was wait for the sound. The moment when arrogance hits the wall hard enough that the whole room finally hears it. They were about to. The PDF sat open on my second monitor like a silent, blinking warning light. The escrow protocol. The one I'd built from scratch 7 years ago after a prior deal nearly collapsed from sloppy signature sequencing. Everyone forgets. Escrow isn't just a holding pen. It's a gate, a vault. And vaults don't open because someone wants them to. They open because process demands it. Clause 9.3b sat dead center of page 6, bolded per legal standards, surrounded by logic arrows and conditional triggers. Escrow funds remain frozen without final tier custodial endorsement. Not may remain, not subject to discretion. Remain frozen. I tapped the timestamp on the clause. It hadn't changed, but I remembered the email chain. From 3 weeks ago, I had flagged this exact point when Veronica's team tried to streamline the checklist. I'd written, removing this clause without an equivalent gate introduces a breach risk. Veronica's reply came 30 minutes later. Approved. Clause deemed redundant by executive review. Proceed with override. Executive review, meaning her. Meaning she wanted speed over compliance, optics over security, and she assumed I'd be too afraid to resist. She forgot I'd written the original version of that clause. She forgot who had the authority to validate the final document. And most of all, she forgot I was watching everything. I opened the change log console, toggled manual update. I added a line to the record. Custodial endorsement withheld due to incomplete buyer-side compliance submission. Clause 9.3b remains in effect. Protocol state frozen. The system auto-appended my credentials and a timestamp. That entry alone would be enough to halt the escrow, even without further escalation. But I wasn't done. I attached the PDF to a new folder titled Final, Signature Flow a Custodial Lock Engaged. Then I opened the audit trail tool. This wasn't some fancy AI-generated risk thing. This was old-school, line-by-line human accountability. Every routed signature, every document edit, every person who touched the protocol had their name, timestamp, and system ID stamped into the audit note. I wrote it clean. Audit note. Document D4 modified without custodial clearance. Buyer-side compliance note missing. Clause 6 conditionality not fulfilled. Custodial sign-off withheld pending fulfillment. Clause 9.3b inviolable. System-generated hash attached. My digital signature, HLIN, status, protocol lock active. I saved the note. Then paused. Outside my door, someone walked past, talking loudly about pizza orders and end-of-quarter bonuses. The sound barely registered. I was so deep in the flow, so utterly aligned with the machine in front of me. It was like we were the only two beings left in the building, me and the system. No noise, no politics, just integrity, codified and time-stamped. I turned back to the main call. Veronica was trying to rally morale again. Let's wrap this up so I can still make my 5:30. Her laugh was light, careless. These things only drag when we let them. I say we just close. There it was again. The pressure, the push. She had no clue what was already sitting in the escrow agent's inbox. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just clicked send. The PDF with my audit note attached launched silently into the shared pipeline. One email, one document, one time-stamped truth. Then I leaned back and watched the screen. Hands folded, face unreadable. The file was live now, and the moment someone opened it, the game would stop playing by Veronica's rules. Veronica leaned forward like she was settling into a throne, her smile smug and slow, the kind of grin that said, I win again. Great, we're all aligned, she said, adjusting her hair like the camera was a Vogue shoot instead of a $18 million legal convergence. Let's get signatures finalized and move into wire prep. She was glowing with momentum, eyes darting to her assistant, to the bankers, to the CFO nodding dutifully 2 rows below in the call grid. Everyone thought the landing gear was down. Everyone was smiling like the flight was already over, except the plane hadn't touched ground, and the pilot wasn't her. I muted myself. My room fell silent. No hum from anyone else, no distant chatter, just the quiet assurance of a clean protocol stack glowing on my monitor. I clicked send. No dramatics, no big red button, just a simple, plain email with a PDF attachment and a 2-line message. Updated escrow protocol attached. Audit trail included. Sign-off pending custodial endorsement per clause 9.3b. I watched the progress bar slide across, then disappear. Across the screen, the escrow agent blinked. He had just opened it. I saw the light shift on his face, the way his head tilted slightly as his eyes scanned down the page. I imagined him hitting the red banner, protocol locked pending custodial signature. Then came the pause, the kind of pause that ripples. He said. Just that, at first. A soft throat clear. Then louder, professional. We're missing a signature. That got everyone's attention. Veronica froze halfway through some victory-flavored anecdote about post-deal champagne. What? The agent repeated, this time firmer. We're missing a signature, custodial endorsement. This file, he glanced at something off-screen, indicates that without it, we cannot release funds. Silence. No laughs now, no polite nods, no momentum. Veronica blinked, then forced a chuckle. That can't be right. We've got everyone on this call. The agent didn't look up. The custodial endorsement hasn't been submitted. The phrase hung in the air like a grenade pin had just been pulled. I said nothing. I didn't need to. Someone, maybe the junior tax advisor, maybe the buyer's general counsel, started flipping through the shared doc folders, the sound of frantic keyboard clicks echoing through the call. I saw windows opening, mouse cursors flying. Even people without direct stake in the protocol were scanning PDFs like their jobs depended on it. Because now, they might. Then someone finally asked, voice hesitant, is Harper on this call? My mouse hovered over the unmute button, but I didn't press it. Veronica tried again, a little too loud, a little too fast. This is a minor hiccup. We'll get it cleaned up. We've closed like this before. But her voice cracked just slightly on before, because she knew. Deep down, she knew this wasn't before, because before I hadn't clicked send, and now the whole process was locked. Clause 9.3b was live, active, undeniable. That PDF was time-stamped, audit signed, hashed, and backed by every protocol string I'd written into escrow law over the last decade. It wasn't a suggestion. It was law. No signature from me, no release. I leaned back in my chair as the call grid erupted into soft chaos. People asking each other where the file was, if a workaround existed, if we could escalate the requirement. You could feel it, the tremor under the table. The realization that no one, not even Veronica with all her noise, could talk their way through this one. I had played my card, and now the silence was theirs to sit in. What? Veronica blinked hard, like the word itself offended her. We've got everyone on this call. Harper's here, aren't you? Her voice had that strained brightness now, teeth showing, voice tight, like she was trying to hold the edge of a crumbling stage set together with duct tape and denial. The escrow agent didn't so much as flinch. Ms. Lynn has not signed, he said, tone neutral as a metronome, and under protocol, her sign-off is mandatory for release. Clause 9.3b is explicit. Someone inhaled sharply. Then the soft tap-tap of keyboards as a dozen people, legal teams, counsel, CFOs, scrambled to open the protocol document they hadn't read closely enough. I could see the delay between realization and panic. Half the call had forgotten who I even was. The other half never bothered to ask. Now all eyes were trying to find me on the video grid, as if staring hard enough could conjure a signature. Veronica's face tightened. Okay, hold on. Harper, this must be a miscommunication. Can we fix it on our end? I still didn't unmute. Let them sweat. A quiet voice, Carmichael, from the buyer's legal side, finally broke in, measured and grim. She's right. It's in the protocol. Clause 9.3b. Final tier endorsement. Custodial. No override function. It's there in black and white. He didn't say we missed it, but it was all over his face. Another second passed. Then someone else whispered into their mic without realizing they weren't muted. Holy shit, this wasn't flagged. Veronica sat back like someone had slapped her with a binder. Her expression flickered. Pride, confusion, then something close to fear. We can amend, she said quickly, a little too quickly. Let's revise the clause or submit a new protocol. We can roll this forward by EOD if everyone agrees. Amendment requires all party countersignatures, the agent replied without missing a beat. That cannot happen post-disbursement. You'd have to pause the release. And there it was. The first crack in Veronica's glass house. Someone from the investor group unmuted, an older man with a voice like gravel and no patience. Why wasn't this protocol followed from the start? Veronica tried to smile. It was a legacy clause. We didn't see the need. You didn't see the need? The man repeated, incredulous. Internal teams confirmed legal approval. The custodial requirement wasn't considered a blocker, she said, each word growing shakier. So you skipped the signature of the person holding the funds? That one landed. Another pause. People were no longer looking at the screen. They were watching her, the glossy, confident COO who had steamrolled every call, every timeline, every concern. Now she was fumbling. I could see her trying to find someone, anyone, to back her up. But all the heads in the video grid were either frozen or looking down at documents. No one was jumping to save her. Not this time. Her eyes landed on me finally, a flicker of something desperate behind them. I stared back, unmoved, still muted, still patient. Then came the whisper through the call. Harper, are you able to clarify? I tapped a key and unmuted. My voice was clear, level. The clause cannot be retroactively satisfied, I said. Escrow funds remain frozen until custodial compliance is met. It's irreversible once the protocol enters lock state. That occurred 23 minutes ago. Veronica opened her mouth, but nothing came out. For the first time all evening, she had no script, no snide remark, no flashy override, just silence. And in that silence, something shifted. Her certainty broke. Why was protocol ignored? The voice dropped like a hammer. It belonged to Greg Stanton, principal investor, board proxy, and the only person on the call who didn't blink when someone said the word litigation. Until now, he'd been a silent square in the corner of the video grid, arms crossed, camera unmoved. But now his tone was cold steel, not a question, an indictment. Veronica froze. Her mouth opened, then shut again. Then, grasping for control, she started talking. We had to maintain timeline velocity, she said, as if momentum was a legal strategy. We've been pushing for an internal close this quarter, and, frankly, there's been over-reliance on checklists and templated flows. This clause wasn't flagged by primary counsel. It slipped past our automation. She gave a tight, rehearsed smile, the kind you use to downplay a fender bender. No one was buying it. You bypassed custodial clearance, Stanton said flatly, on an $18 million transaction. It wasn't malicious, just expedient. That word, expedient. I could feel the room stiffen even through the screen. A junior on the finance team whispered to someone, "She's done," forgetting his mic was hot. He turned beet red and muted fast, but it was already out there. Veronica knew it too. Her carefully curated armor was cracking in real time. The lead counsel for the buyer team adjusted her glasses. "We need formal clarity. Ms. Lin, can you confirm the state of the protocol?" I didn't hesitate. I unmuted. "Clause 9.3b is irreversible past midnight," I said, calm as snowfall. "That's 2 hours from now. At that point, the custodial lock auto-triggers full freeze. All funds remain unreleasable until reprocessed through a new protocol cycle." Veronica leaned forward, eyes sharp. "So what? You're saying we have to delay the close?" I didn't answer her. I wasn't speaking to her anymore. Instead, I turned slightly and addressed the counsel directly. The only compliant path forward is revalidation with full custodial clearance. That process begins with custodial oversight, and I can't sign what was deliberately altered. Silence. Then Stanton leaned in, his image pixelating slightly from a shaky camera connection, but his words crystal clear. "Then Harper oversees the escrow moving forward." Just like that, the decision made itself. Veronica blinked. I'm sorry. What? We can't risk this again, Stanton replied, eyes locked to someone off camera. This isn't about optics. It's about control. Ms. Lin, if you're willing to manage direct custodial oversight, you have our backing. I paused. Just a moment, then gave a small nod. Confirmed, I said. The buyer's counsel spoke next. We'll reroute all final escrow execution to Harper's protocol. Please send her any legacy documents for review. We'll be working off her audit trail from now on. And just like that, the current shifted. One moment, I was the ignored conduit, the woman who was supposed to smile, mute, and nod. The next, I was the only person in the room whose name couldn't be bypassed. Veronica sat there, frozen, her jaw slightly slack. You could see the calculation happening behind her eyes. How to spin this, how to salvage, how to blame the tools or a junior or the legacy protocol. But it was too late. No one was listening anymore. All eyes were on me. I didn't gloat, didn't smirk, didn't say I told you so. I just hit mute again. Because the moment didn't need noise. It already belonged to me. Veronica's screen froze mid-sentence, eyes wide, mouth half open, and then she was gone. Removed. Just like that. The moderator didn't announce it, didn't apologize. 1 second she was there, the next she wasn't. Her square went dark like a light switch had been flipped. Clean. Efficient. There wasn't a sound on the line for several seconds. Just the rustle of someone adjusting a headset. A cough. A muted sigh. And then the investor rep cleared his throat and said what everyone was already thinking. We'll be pausing this deal until custodial compliance is fully restored and independently reviewed. That was it. The call didn't end with celebration or champagne or high fives over Zoom. It ended with the unmistakable stillness of something that should have happened, but didn't, because I said so. The $18 million stayed locked in place, every penny still floating in escrow, untouched. A vault with a digital fingerprint waiting for one very specific hand. Mine. Until then, nothing moved. I logged out quietly. No victory lap, no mic drop, just a slow stretch of my shoulders in the dim light of my windowless office. The glow of my second monitor still showed the frozen status bar. Frozen. Awaiting final custodial clearance. Authorized. Custodian, H. Lin, timestamp, lock initiated. I closed the file and stood up for the first time in 3 hours. An hour later, an email landed in my inbox. Subject line, Governance Session Invite, Protocol Oversight Discussion. It came with a follow-up from Buyer Legal. We're moving to adopt your flow documentation as baseline precedent. Please confirm your availability for review and implementation. I confirmed with one line. Available. We'll bring protocol archive. Then I got up, walked to the break room, poured myself the worst cup of coffee on earth, and stood in silence as it cooled in my hand. No one clapped. No one handed me a plaque. That wasn't how this kind of power worked. You didn't get applause for knowing the rules. You got remembered for writing them. By morning, the updated closing checklist was distributed across 4 firms. At the top, in bold, capitalized red font, just above the signature line, it said, Escrow Control. Lin's signature required no applause, no spotlight, just permanent control, printed and archived, exactly where it belonged.